The Women's Fund for Scotland is Scotland's only dedicated fund for women and girls. I'm Susan Morrison, and this is our podcast where we talk to inspiring women improving the lives of those women and girls today. In this episode, we are headed to the smallest county in Scotland, Clackmananshire. Alison from Clackmananshire Women's Aid tells us how they're helping young women escape the trap. Alison, you're joining us to talk about Clackmananshire Women's Aid. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, you see, I'm a bit of a city rat, and Clackmananshire always strikes me as very rural. And I think a lot of people like me are quite surprised to discover that there has to be Clackmananshire Women's Aid. And do you find that quite a lot, that us townies are a bit startled?
Yes, I think before I joined, I was in exactly the same place as well. Obviously, I don't live there, but Clackmananshire is one of the smallest areas in Scotland, but it has one of the highest rates of domestic abuse in Scotland, which is a really surprising fact, and one that we unfortunately have to use a lot when we're applying for funds, because it is such a powerful statistic in terms of what's going on in the county. I think people do think rural, there aren't as many issues, but actually when you think about the history of Clackmananshire, built up on the mills, and all of that has gone, there isn't really an industry that you can associate with it. There isn't a large hub, there's not a big city or an employer, so there's a lot of deprivation in Clackmananshire. However, I would say deprivation doesn't associate necessarily with domestic abuse. Domestic abuse happens across all levels of society.
Yeah, that's the next question I was going to come to, is what's Clackmananshire Women's Aid's role in Clackmananshire? It is surprising it's the smallest, but it's got the biggest name, I think.
Yes, lots of letters. Our role, I mean, we were established on sort of the back of the women's liberation movement back in the 1970s. So I think we're sort of 50 years in a couple of years' time. And then Scottish Women's Aid came together to create, I guess, an umbrella organisation to support all the other women's aid groups across Scotland. So historically, it was more about supporting women fleeing domestic abuse and providing safe accommodation. So all women's aid groups in Scotland, including ours, have a refuge. And that is what it says on the tin. It's there to provide refuge, a safe space for women at that point of crisis, fleeing domestic abuse, and their families as well. But actually, in the last 10, 15 years, and in the last sort of 2 years, our role has changed a huge amount, more from moving from sort of crisis support, which we still do, but to prevention and awareness raising. And our role, particularly in schools with young women, is about awareness raising, talking to them about what healthy relationships are, understanding what abuse looks like, debunking that myth that it's just physical. We work with women in the community one-to-one. We don't currently, but we will be going back to having women's groups so that women can support each other. We offer counselling support. We support a lot of local events, awareness raising. We're in the colleges to support students there. A huge breadth of work with women across Clackmananshire.
That's very interesting that you talk about the change of role, because you got funding from the Women's Fund for Scotland. Yeah. And I think the thing that struck me most was it was for training staff. Mm-hmm. I think the word that just look at that again, increasing demand. I thought, are we still in a situation where the demand is increasing?
Yes, I mean, I'm relatively new in post. I came in after COVID to an organisation that was dealing with waiting lists. And that actually, even when I say it, makes me kind of shudder. You know, you're at a point of crisis and you're on a waiting list. The reality, though, just to reassure you, that waiting list is we still have phone contact, we have text contact, we signpost to places of support, information that might help them in that immediate need. The waiting list is really just for face-to-face support. So it's not like the woman is sort of left with nothing. So I came in on the back of sort of post-pandemic waiting lists, and we still have waiting lists for both women and young women, children and women in the community. So yeah, the demand is there. And I don't know, it's not necessarily an increase in domestic abuse. We deal with women who are currently experiencing abuse, but also women who have historically experienced abuse. And I think there is sort of a growing understanding that people are coming out to talk about things that have happened in their past. So we support women who have had historical abuse, and maybe gone on to live a life, but something's triggered and they want to talk about it and get support for it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny how we expect and understand post-traumatic stress disorder in people who've been in frontline jobs or the military, and who've had to undergo very dangerous situations. Women who've experienced domestic abuse are exactly the same, aren't they?
100%, and sadly for many women it's repeated. So there's a cycle of abuse. So whether that's going back to the original perpetrator, and confusing sort of that attention for love, and just wanting somebody in their life, or a woman who goes from relationship to relationship and suffers abuse. So that sort of cycle of abuse feeds into that post-traumatic stress that you just talked about.
Mm. And again, I'm really interested by the fact that, because one of the things that puzzled us way back in the early days was how to break the cycle that you've just described of a woman going from one relationship to another relationship, but even that first relationship that she gets involved in. And you say now you're speaking to young women in schools, and what do you do? I mean, that's a really touchy subject. How do you say that?
Yeah, the work we do in schools, we do work with boys as well, just to sort of make that clear. Because it's not about educating girls how not to be in abusive relationships. It's about educating all young people how to be in healthy relationships and what that looks like. So the work we do in schools, we do one-to-one work with young people who've been affected directly by domestic abuse. So that's normally through our referral process. But we also increasingly now we do workshops in schools. So we respond to the need of the school. So they will come to us and say they've got a particular issue with online trolling, sexting, indecent images being shared around the school. So we will go in and tailor workshops, and the team are incredible. The resources that they pull together to generate conversations with these young people, they get a better response because they're not teachers. And they're not afraid to talk about things that other people are afraid to talk about, use words that maybe, people in my day used to giggle about, kind of thing, talking about people's body parts, but not afraid to tackle the really difficult issues. Obviously being sensitive to what's going on in the room. But what we find is young people then open up, and young people will then seek us out. So at some schools we run like a lunch club, and if they've maybe been at a workshop, heard something, they'll come along and say, actually, my boyfriend's done that to me and he told me that was normal. And we're like, no, that's not normal. So it really is putting a conversation. I guess my frustration is it's not included in the curriculum, it's not funded, it's not, it's an add-on. And it's not just about abuse, it's about coercion, control, trolling, as I say, online issues that young people have. All sorts of things that are about, getting the balance right for healthy relationships.
Yes, I'm assuming, or correct me if I'm wrong here, that was part of the training that you got the funding for.
Yes. So part of the funding was for 2 of our workers to be trained facilitators in a program called Escape the Trap, supporting teenage relationship abuse. So this isn't about teenagers who have been subject to domestic abuse in their home. It's about teenagers in abusive relationships.
What?
But yes.
Teenagers?
Yes. Yeah. Fed by what they see online, what they believe to be normal. I do have a bit of a horror story about a girl that came to us. We've been talking about what affection looks like, what kindness looks like. And she said that her boyfriend only kisses her with his hands around her neck because that's normal. And she had no previous experience. So how was she to know that wasn't normal?
Where are boys getting these messages from?
Online.
I mean, I'm aware of Andrew Tate and his evil workings. So, my Lord, Alison, you've got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a frontline worker, so my role is to support my team. But yeah, we talk a lot, we share a lot. There's a lot of support for the team because obviously it has an impact on them, hearing some of these things. So yes, the funding we got is for a program called Escape the Trap. But we talk about the dynamics of abuse, grooming, coercion, power and control, balanced with what it would feel like to have love, care and respect in a healthy relationship. So it'll encourage young people to talk about these issues and understand the differences, but also look after their own sort of emotional health and well-being at the same time. So it is a tailored programme with materials. It gives the team a good structure to work to, but then allows a flow within the sessions depending on the needs of those young people.
That's very interesting. You're doing the actual opposite of teachers who are wonderful and do an amazing job, but they have a particular role to play, which is to educate with a little bit of that finger waggy going on. But you are much freer. You can just go in, and you just said to yourself, you're letting them guide the session. You're letting the young people guide the session.
Yes, yeah. In all the schools we go into, that there's always a need identified. We can show them up the programs that we offer, and we can now add Escape the Trap to that offering, and they will select what they feel is most appropriate at any given time, and then we will deliver those workshops. But that can change depending on the response of the young people at the time.
That's a very interesting title, Escape the Trap.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel as if there are, from what you've said now, that there are young women walking into a lifetime's trap. And you see that, of course, with your work later on.
Yes, yeah, very much so, yes. And it's about that balance of, it's not all the sort of the difficult stuff, the negative stuff. It's about talking about what love might feel like, what kindness is, what friendship is in a relationship, what gestures mean in a relationship, so that these young people can start to identify that and call it out when it's wrong.
See, that's the tough bit, because teenagers won't do that, will they? Because it's like, well, it must be right because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah. I think the power of what we do, particularly in workshops, is young people will then start talking to each other about it, challenge each other about it maybe. And that peer group support is so powerful in teenagers. And as you say, it can go either way, but in a positive sense, it can be really powerful.
That's really, because actually you're teaching them to do it and giving them permission to do it. Therefore, somebody told me this isn't right, so it's not right. That's usually when you find teenagers starting to question things, when someone who's not their teacher, not their parent, tells them. It's always got to be somebody else, isn't it? Nobody ever listens to their mother, do they?
Nope. And it's also difficult subjects that some parents don't feel equipped to talk about.
Well, I mean, you've also told us quite shockingly that you're dealing with high levels of domestic abuse anyway. So it's in the community, which is the dangerous thing. So it's normalised, but you've got to walk in and go, well, actually, guys, this isn't a good idea. That is a tough ask, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing we've been talking about recently is adding in sort of what the process of, if somebody is experiencing domestic abuse, what that looks like, both for the survivor, but also the perpetrator. And in doing so, that's about educating the way that the law has changed, the way that the police respond, the courts respond, so that for both boys and girls, they understand the seriousness and the consequences. But also for people who've maybe survived domestic abuse, we can talk about their experiences of having safety measures in place, the response that the police can put around them to keep them safe. So it's not just about saying this is happening in our community. It's about saying this is how all the services work together to support people who are experiencing this.
Yeah, and taking it forward from there, which is, I mean, it must be great for women in relationships that are going wrong in Clackmananshire to know that you're there. I mean, do they know you're there? How do they find out about you?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting question about that, and I thought actually we don't market ourselves at all. We don't need to. Raising awareness is part of what we do, but actually we work very, very collaboratively with all the other agencies in Clackmananshire, and that is the beauty of having a small local authority, because everybody knows everybody. And in my short time there, I've been really welcomed. I'm invited to lots of meetings, so I feel very connected. So most of our referrals come through other agencies, so social work, police, health, and they're all very aware of the work we do. We meet with them regularly. We make sure they know what we can offer. We talk to them about our waiting list. So women who are experiencing abuse it'll be either a health issue or a police issue. And then that comes to us for support. But women self-refer. We have women turn up on the doorstep, with all their belongings in the car. So they do know we're there.
That's the most tragic thing of all, the idea of suddenly a woman being pushed so far that she's just standing on your doorstep.
Yeah.
And then you have to swing into action. Can I ask you something, Alison? Say over a 10-year period, do you think things are getting better or worse?
I would say probably worse, but that's based on reporting and statistics, which is always, the more you raise awareness and the more you educate people, the more people will bring issues to the fore. People are more challenging, I suppose, of what they observe, and will maybe call it out with their friends or relatives. Whereas I think historically people would just go, oh, yeah, we'll not talk about that. That's not happening. Yeah, very,
Oh,
very much.
arms crossed and just going, oh, well, it's behind closed doors and between them. Uh-huh.
So definitely increase, probably, and that'll be the reason. But I think the response and we have a violence against women partnership, as most authorities do, and it's a really powerful group in Clackmananshire, and it's all agencies working together. So I think the responses and the services are much better as well.
So just to take you back to escaping the trap, what slightly startled me there was you said it's not part of the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to depend on the school letting you in, or how does that work?
Yeah, we get invited in. And again, we're a victim of our own success. I mean, one of our workers said to me the other day, this is a primary school she's in, and the head teacher said, I'd really like you here 5 days a week, because when they go in, they're either doing one-to-one work or they're doing group work. But then they're also, if something escalates in the classroom or the playground, they're being asked to support if they have a relationship with that young person. So the need is there.
Primary school?
Yeah, we've even worked in nurseries.
What do you do in primary school? I mean, are these the perpetrators of the future or the victims of the future?
The work in primary school, a lot of it is one-to-one work with children who are living in a house where there is domestic abuse happening. So there's one-to-one work with them. And that's very much at that age, it's very much about emotions and feelings and having a safe friend to talk to. So it's about building a relationship with that young person and making them feel that, the world is safe and, we'll get through this. The workshops they do in primary schools are generally at an older age, which will be about, they've all got mobile phones. They're all online. They're all on, social media. So it's about education and awareness at that young age.
So young to get in there. But then if you get in that young, you can change the needle slightly, can't you?
Yes, hopefully. Yeah.
So that means that in years to come, there might be less domestic abuse.
Yeah, greater awareness, more education, prevention is absolutely what we're about. When we started this conversation, we talked about sort of where we came from, and that was about a reactive service. Yes, we still have that, and there's a need for that. But over time, part of my strategy is to have more focus on prevention in the community, in hairdressers, in nail bars, where people are seeing women, they're chatting away. They may see something physical, but they may also hear something. And we want to help those professionals be equipped with the tools to sort of say, actually, are you okay? There are services that can help you, and talking about it in a way that's informed and that they can signpost services like us for women who are experiencing abuse.
Well, I think we should start two campaigns. One, I think Escaping the Trap is absolutely brilliant. I think it's a fantastic title, and whoa, let's do that. But secondly, we're going to get in t-shirts, right, Alison? Go with me on this one. It's a merchandising idea. And it says, "Are you okay?" And we'll just put people randomly around and people can go and talk to them. What do you think?
We have talked about that, yeah. We've talked about it. There's a model in England where they have what they call community champions. So people in the community, because communities are still quite closed and everybody knows everybody. So having champions in the community that are maybe, I don't know, somebody who works at the health centre or the local community hub, who is that champion that people know they can go and talk to. And it will be a first stage, and they may then refer on to us. But just getting that conversation out there and talking to women in a place they feel safe, and somebody that maybe already have a connection with. So yeah, are you okay?
Are you okay? I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. I mean, I'm the worst person to speak to because I'm the person that you wind up talking to for hours whilst I just find out everything about you because it's terrible. But I would happily wonder about the t-shirt going, "Are you okay?" So that I could help in some small way. It's almost like an epidemic, but it's nice to know there's people like you and your organisation out there trying to stem this flow. I hope it's getting better. It's just that we know more about it.
Yeah. It's very difficult to sort of identify trends. You've got police statistics, which in Clackmananshire, the police statistics are showing a decline, but
good.
Not all cases of abuse end up with the police. So it's not really a measure.
No, that's right. And then also what you call coercive control has been on the increase, and that's a lot harder to spot. But the idea, so actually, if that's a piece of advice you could give to any woman out there who's listening in, is also to use that phrase, "Are you okay?" to any friend that she thinks is not okay.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid of it. Yeah. I think we dodge as a society culturally, we dodge some of these difficult things. And I've been really impressed by some of the movements around, things like Ask Angela in pubs, which, give women who are potentially in a difficult situation a way to get help. So I think as a society, we're getting better at having difficult conversations. And once you've asked the question, the relief is probably tangible.
Yeah, it is. It has happened to me once or twice where I have actually asked friends of mine who I knew were struggling a little bit and said, are you all right? And they're not. But also, I think it's a great lesson to teach to teenage girls who sometimes aren't the most supportive of each other. I think teaching them to be more supportive and to say, are you okay? And get an open conversation. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Well, they're at the very beginning. They're navigating relationships for the first time. They possibly don't have a positive sort of role model at home to base that on. They have been completely submerged in everything through films, TV, social media about what relationships should and shouldn't be. So it must horribly confusing time.
It is a horribly confusing time, but thank goodness you're there, Alison. That's what I say. So everybody out there, say, are you okay to any one of your friends, even if you think you're fine, because that'll make them worried because they'll think, oh, am I not okay? What? But I think it's brilliant, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Alison. And
thank you.
More power to your elbow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us and listening to this story. I hope you've been inspired. And if you would like to support the Women's Fund for Scotland, search for us online and listen out for our other podcast episodes.